Here's the Akrapovic pipe right here for the Sprint Primavera 150cc scooter. Also fits the 125 models in other markets. As you can see, it's got the carbon fiber end cap on it. The internal baffle is removable if you're looking to have some super loud pipe. If you leave the baffle in there, they work very well with the stock setup. The fuel injection that's on these scooters adapts just fine with these pipes. You don't need to do any other changes. You just bolt this pipe right on. Works great. Some other items included, you got the header, beautifully robotically hand fancy welded, whatever you want to call it, hydroform.
What's the material on that header, Robot?
The stainless steel.
Nice. What else do you get with the exhaust?
Get all the hardware needed. Got two of the exhaust springs with their little logo embossed in the silicone rubber there. The four shorties with washers actually hold the muffler canister to the bracket. This bracket mounts to the existing muffler mounting points on the engine with these longer screws. Pretty simple installation. And I'll show you a couple tips for easy installation. Make the installation go a little quicker here.
How about that last swing arm bracket?
Nice powder coated bracket here. You can see it's a laser cut logo made of stainless steel right here. It's pretty nice. This is the installation guide for installing a pipe on a Primavera or Sprint 150, 125 new style 3-valve engine scooter here. Real simple install. Only a couple basic tools are needed. I'll start out with them. You're going to need an extension of some sort. And I'm using a 1/4 inch drive, so there's a 1/4 inch ratchet. This is a useful tool for taking the two header bolts off, and it's a wobble 10mm. You can also get away with a standard 10mm socket with a wobble, wobble end that would go in between their wobble adapter or whatever you want to call it. You're going to need a 13mm socket for the bolts that are included with the pipe. And I like to have a ratchety 13mm because on the pipe bracket you want to get behind the pipe and tighten them. Works a little easier than getting the ratchet back there. Take the O2 sensor off the header. You're going to need a 14mm. To remove the existing pipe, they have 6mm. Allen is all you need to take those two 8mm fasteners off, and you'll need a spring puller to install the new pipe. The springs that hold the header to the exhaust canister itself. And included with the pipe is there's anti-seize. I don't know where the little anti-seize packet went, but here's a container of anti-seize. Always want to put this on stainless steel, keep it from galling. All right, we're going to jump in and removing the stock pipe here. A couple things to make it a lot simpler. A lot of people want to take the whole O2 sensor off. It's actually held by a little clip that's on the fan cover, and the connector is actually rather tricky to disconnect way up in there. It's got a special tab that holds, locks the connector in place. And I found you can just carefully remove the oxygen sensor without disconnecting the connector. So pretty simple, loose end, and then you could just, I've left the connection intact, and I would say I turned about 4 or 5 turns to unscrew it. So you can see there's a little tension on the wires, and I'll go ahead and relax it and just leave it right there. Gotta disconnect the 2 header joints. Get my flashlight out here if you want to see those up in there. There's 2 of them kind of diagonal to each other, buried up there, and you need to loosen those too.
This is where that swivel comes in handy.
Oh, there goes the anti-seize. There's one of them. generally, if you have the first one loose, kind of relieves pressure off the flange. So the other one comes out pretty easy. And then on the actual motor, there's going to be the 2 outlet fasteners.
And those are those little brass flange nuts that hold the header on. We just showed those.
Now I'll cheat. Kind of support the pipe with the last one. There you go. What was that? About 2 minutes? Had the pipe off, if that.
2 minutes. How heavy is that robot, would you guesstimate? Putting you on the spot. I think they weigh like 14 pounds, is that possible?
Somewhere in there, like 12 or 14 pounds.
It's one of the major advantages of the Akrapovic exhaust is just the curb weight, the savings. Where that silencer probably weighs, what, 3 pounds or something like that? Extremely lightweight, but well-made exhaust. And look at robots using instructions.
I will show you the instructions that are included are very detailed, pretty much, you know, covering removing the O2 sensor, the 2 nuts up at the header, and the 2 bolts that hold it to the engine right there. For some markets, they have a catalytic converter that's not available here. Goes into the header, but you can ignore that step. The bracket. Go ahead and bolt the bracket and kind of.
Those of you that have bought other products from Scooter West or play around with your scooters and bought various accessories, I'm sure that those fully detailed instructions with pictures or something you haven't really seen before. So thanks so much for that, Akrapovic. So robot's prepping the swing arm and digging up the necessary fasteners to install that. That beautiful bracket is going to go right on there. Oh yeah.
And even on the regular fasteners, you know, they're exposed to kind of high temperature. You could put a small amount of the anti-seize that's included with the kit on the threads. And generally with most exhaust, you know, I recommend, you know, installing everything loose before you go to town tightening all these fasteners up. So there you go, got the bracket in place. Go ahead and get the header ready. Kind of just got to feel your way around up there. You know, make sure that there's a copper exhaust gasket up in the exhaust port of the cylinder head. Make sure that gasket's in good shape.
How often would you say that gasket ever actually falls out?
Not too often. I've seen other makes where it will fall out, but not on the Vespas. They actually have 4 little tabs that kind of hold them in place when they're installed.
So on a relatively new Sprint or Primavera, you shouldn't have issues with that gasket becoming dislodged. But you see a little brass ring, maybe about 1.5 inches in diameter. Thereabouts, robot, would you say?
Yeah, somewhere in that range.
See that sitting underneath the screw, you're gonna have a little mini problem if you don't reinstall that. Robot's like a magician with those long, sexy fingers.
Kind of feeling my way around.
Yeah, oh yeah, baby.
You know, if you're doing this for the first time, you may want to just use a, you know, flashlight. Kind of work your way. I've got the lower fastener in, and then the second one, I'll go ahead and use the socket to kind of.
Taking advantage of the flange nut. How the flange nut can kind of sit at the top of the socket and kind of reach up there and get it started. That hydroformed header. That's pretty cool looking.
All right, so now that both the nuts are started, you can go ahead again, only just snug them right to where, you know, where the header will still move around. All right, so I have the header in there. It's still a little loose at this point. O2 sensor, you know, take extra care not to put any of the anti-seize on the actual tip. These sensors are very sensitive to contamination. Just a small amount. And the key to installing this is I'm going to actually essentially, you know, if I'm unscrewing it or unwinding, you know, turning the O2 sensor the counterclockwise, you know, like I said, about 5 turns. And once it catches, you know, and threads in, the wire is going to be relaxed and won't be twisted up. So
Got it. So what you did is you spun that oxygen sensor the opposite direction.
you know, to kind of pre-wind the actual wire itself.
That's a good tip right there, everybody. Hopefully you
And
pick that up at home.
you don't want to over tighten that, but I'm just using my palm. I'm not cranking on it, and that's as tight as you want to go with the O2 sensor right there.
Bada bing.
Here.
What you doing now, robot?
I just want to make sure all these bosses, the bolts thread into them. 'Cause sometimes they're pretty easy to cross thread, or it might be a little burr in there. And that one's a little tighter. You can see I'm kind of working it a little bit more. Just before you go to install it and then find out this is tight, it's good to find out beforehand there.
Look at that. Fine. Laser etching or something? Pretty beautiful exhaust. So making sure all the threads are free and clear, so when he's reaching up there from behind, he's not going to have any surprises.
And I'm just dropping the washers on each one of these bolts here.
And again, that's all the hardware that's provided with the exhaust. Can't stress enough the ease of installation, the fact that everything's included. Ooh, that's a nice tip right there.
Small amount of anti-seize inside the slip joint of where the header goes in. And I'm going to go ahead and slide it right on the header there. So. And you can see it almost falls right under the centers of those slotted holes right there. So pretty easy to get started. You might, like I said, leave things loose, your header loose, and you'll get all these started. All right, all 4 fasteners from the rear are hand tightened right now. And with them still loose, I'm going to go ahead and put the spring mounts that hold the header to the exhaust. So there was the first one. And the second one under here, go ahead and hook it to the canister. And you can see it's on a swivel there. And you could use the puller to catch the other hook right there. So pretty simple. And kind of make sure, you know, to start tightening, you can see that there's no gap here, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten the 2 header joints. And if you want to use a torque wrench, it's about 11 foot-pounds for those headers. These 6 fasteners here, they're about 16 foot-pounds, 16, 17 foot-pounds. With the header fasteners, you kind of want to go back and forth between the 2 to kind of equally, you know, equalize the tightening torque on it. And again, I'm using the same wobble that I used to take it off. And you probably can't see what's going on because my head's in the way. And there you go. Take a 12 millimeter. Go ahead and tighten that one. And the easiest way to tighten these ones from the back is you use a ratcheting closed-end wrench right here. You know, if it's do it by hand a little bit, and then if it gets a little too tight to do by hand, you can put your finger in there and kind of just hold that. And there you go, tightening the last of those 4 fasteners. And again, just tightening fasteners all the time, you kind of get a feel for what you should tighten an 8 millimeter fastener. And kind of standard torque's about 16 foot-pounds for that style fastener. Pretty difficult to get a torque wrench back there. Pretty much that, you know, sums up the installation. Oftentimes I'll wipe all the surface of the stainless steel in the canister with rubbing alcohol just to get all my greasy fingerprints off there, because sometimes the fingerprints will etch into the pipe, you know, when it heats up. And I would say after 50 miles, you know, a couple of heat cycles of the pipe, I would go through and check all your fasteners. You definitely don't want your pipe falling off. It's always a good idea with any of these aftermarket pipes to double check the torques of all the fasteners holding the pipe. And just over the regular usage, make sure the springs are still intact. You know, sometimes vibration, you'll lose a spring, no big deal. Pretty easily replaceable parts. And there you go.
Probably fire it up. Are you ready?
A little smoke there. You get some pretty nice smells off the brand new pipe, kind of like brand new car smells. Probably not the best to be breathing in, but that's kind of the way it goes with these new pipes, to kind of burn off some of the coatings.
How long would you say that odor can be expected?
Probably the first 10 miles.
Okay.
You know, first good test ride, it's going to be all gone. But don't be alarmed if you see a little smoke coming out of the pipe, you know, especially after you shut it off. Look like a barrel of a smoking gun.
Cool,
There you go.
so we'll get the bike back on ground floor and we'll take it for a quick little test drive and that'll be it. Thanks for tuning in. So as a bonus feature of this particular video, Will's going to show how quickly this exhaust will come off for the sake of doing a tire change.
Yeah, nice thing about this pipe is it being the two-piece construction, you don't need to actually remove the header and O2 sensor every time you do a tire. So I went ahead and just loosened the two header joints. Can loosen the two spring mounts. So again, I'm probably gonna have a minute and a half and I'll have this pipe right off. One way to get in there a little easier is with a wobble, you know, or you can get up into that one with a ratchet, you know, or opening wrench. So pretty much go ahead and loosen your top one there. You know, again, I have the header loose, so it makes it so the lower one's a little trickier to get, but you know, with the wobble, you can actually get that one loosened up, or with an open end wrench, you know, a couple steps, you're gonna have to get in there. The header's pretty tight in there, but once you have these two loose in the spring mount, you'll be able to pull the pipe right off and gain access to the wheel here.